Life in the Middle Ages was more brutal than you think. When most people imagine the Middle Ages, they picture knights in shining armor, grand castles, and fair maidens waiting to be rescued. It's the world of storybooks, Hollywood films, and romanticized tales of chivalry and adventure. But the reality was far grimmer. Life in medieval Europe was harsh, dangerous, and often terrifying. For the majority of people, survival was a daily struggle, and death could come suddenly and violently. The Middle Ages were not just brutal for the poor. Disease, warfare, hunger, and social cruelty affected everyone, from peasants to kings. To truly understand the era, we have to look beyond the myths and confront the grim realities of everyday life. Disease was constant and merciless. One of the biggest threats to life in the Middle Ages was disease. Sanitation was almost non-existent. People lived in cramped, dirty conditions, with animals roaming alongside them. Waste often flowed through the streets, contaminating food and water. Common illnesses included typhoid, smallpox, measles, and influenza. But the most devastating was the Black Death, which arrived in Europe in 1347. Over just 4 years, it killed between 30% and 50% of the population, leaving towns empty and families wiped out. Even outside plague years, diseases spread quickly and unpredictably. Doctors had no understanding of germs. Treatments were mostly prayers, bloodletting, and herbal remedies, which often made matters worse. A minor cut could become gangrenous and fatal, and children were especially vulnerable to illness. Hunger was a constant companion. Food in the Middle Ages was not just scarce, it was unreliable. Poor harvests could wipe out an entire year's supply, leaving peasants to survive on bread, gruel, and whatever vegetables they could grow. Meat was rare for commoners. It was reserved for the nobility or during religious feasts. Famines struck frequently. The Great Famine of 1315–1317 killed millions due to crop failures caused by excessive rain, cold weather, and disease among livestock. People often resorted to eating whatever they could find, including bark, roots, and sometimes even rats or dogs. Hunger weakened the immune system, making disease even deadlier. Violence was everywhere. The medieval world was violent, not just in wars, but in daily life. Bandits roamed the countryside, raiding villages and attacking travelers. Local lords wielded near-absolute power over their peasants, enforcing harsh punishments for minor offenses. Legal systems were brutal. Punishments included flaying, hanging, drawing and quartering, and public humiliation. Crime was punished publicly to terrify the population into obedience. Even minor theft could result in mutilation or execution, and torture was widely used to extract confessions. Warfare was constant. Kings and nobles frequently raised armies for territorial disputes, leaving villages plundered, burned, and abandoned. Life on the battlefield was gruesome. Soldiers faced hand-to-hand combat, disease and starvation, and even victorious armies often pillaged civilians indiscriminately. Childhood was dangerous. Childhood in the Middle Ages was short and perilous. Infant mortality was extremely high. Estimates suggest 30% to 50% of children died before the age of 5. Disease, malnutrition, and poor hygiene were constant threats. Education was rare. Only the wealthy could afford tutors or schools. Most children learned to work in fields, workshops, or households, often beginning labor as early as 5 or 6. Physical exhaustion, injuries, and harsh discipline were part of daily life. Even games and toys were dangerous. Wooden swords, knives, and crude playthings could easily lead to injuries. Children had little supervision, and accidents were common and often fatal. Women's lives were harder. Life for women in the Middle Ages was often harder than for men. Marriage was rarely a choice. Many were married off as children to secure alliances or property. Their value was tied to fertility and obedience. Pregnancy was extremely risky. Maternal mortality rates were high, and childbirth could be deadly. Women also faced social restrictions, harsh punishments for perceived misconduct, and violence from husbands or authorities. Witch hunts in later centuries claimed thousands of women, often accused of magic, adultery, or other crimes with no evidence at all. Religion was both comfort and control. Religion dominated medieval life, but it could be a source of both solace and terror. The church provided guidance, community, and education. Festivals, saints' days, and pilgrimages offered rare joy and escape. But religion also enforced control. Heresy was punishable by torture or execution. The Inquisition sought to root out dissent, often using gruesome methods. Fear of divine punishment shaped daily life, with people constantly worrying about sin, damnation, and the afterlife. Church doctrine also reinforced social hierarchies, keeping peasants obedient and kings powerful. Fear of God was as much a tool of social control as a matter of faith. Work was endless and brutal. For peasants, life was defined by work. Fields had to be plowed, crops tended, and livestock cared for. Work was seasonal but relentless, with famine and bad weather leaving no room for rest. Artisans, craftsmen, and laborers faced similarly harsh conditions. Workshops were dark, dangerous, and crowded. Accidents were common, and workers had no legal protections. A broken limb could mean lifelong poverty. Even the wealthy faced pressures. Managing estates, defending property, and maintaining status required constant vigilance. Nobility may have lived in castles, but their lives were not free of danger. Both political intrigue and disease threatened them constantly. The living conditions were awful. Homes were small, crowded, and poorly constructed. Dirt floors, thatched roofs, and shared sleeping areas made disease spread easily. Chimneys were rare, and smoke from cooking fires filled rooms. Sanitation was virtually non-existent. Rivers often doubled as drinking water and sewers. Waste was thrown into streets, and rats thrived in the filth. Fleas and lice were common, spreading plague and other diseases. Conclusion: life, death, and survival. Life in the Middle Ages was unforgiving, harsh, and violent. Disease, famine, cruelty, and social oppression defined existence. Death was constant, suffering was prolonged, and survival required resilience, adaptability, and sheer luck. Yet the brutality of the era also shaped humanity. It taught lessons about governance,